This is a story called The Little Monsters, Chapter 46. The gang get trapped in the school fire whilst looking for Kicker. It's a school day and the whole school are in lessons. Then out of the blue, the school fire alarm goes off and Kicker sees smoke coming under their classroom door, and she told Mrs. Applejack. Everyone was evacuated out of the school building and onto the school field. However, Kicker realised that she had left her fountain pen behind that her grandma bought her for her last birthday, and she ran back into the school building to get it. As soon as the rest of the gang realised that she was gone, they too ran back inside to find her and to get her out. When they got there, they couldn't find her anywhere. They called out her name, but she didn't answer, so they kept looking for her and shouting her name, but they couldn't find her. By this time, Mrs. Applejack had noticed that all 6 kids were gone, and she was desperately worried and she was blaming herself. She was in bits, and Mrs. Tinker and the other staff were trying desperately to reassure her. Of course, by that time the fire brigade were inside, and they were trying desperately to find the kids. By this time the fire had spread and it was more intense than it was when it started, and hope of finding the kids was running out. Then after about half an hour the fire was out, and the search for the kids was still ongoing. However, just as everyone thought that the fire was out, it started again at the back of the building. It was obvious that someone was lighting the fires because 2 of the firemen saw a couple of teenage boys running away from the building. Concern for the gang's safety was increasing. Some of the other kids were crying, and Kicker's older brother and sister tried to run into the building, but they were held back by the police. Kicker's brother said, "What are you doing? That's our sister in there and we need to find her and get her out." One of the police officers said to him, "Calm down. The fire officers will find the kids and get them all out alive. Leave it to the experts. We don't want you getting lost in there too." Eventually the kids were found, safe and sound, huddled together in the corner of a classroom, crying and shouting for help. The fire officers carried them out and took them to the waiting ambulances, where they were checked over by paramedics. All of them were suffering from severe smoke inhalation, and Kicker had a bad burn on her hand. They were all taken to hospital and kept in for a few days. Kicker was devastated that her fountain pen was gone, but she was glad that they were all safe. While she was in hospital, her grandma came to visit her, and she bought her a brand new fountain pen. After 4 days in hospital, the kids, except for Kicker, were allowed to go home. Kicker had to stay in to have a skin graft on her hand. The school was unusable due to the fire, so the whole school had to stay off until Mrs. Tinker could find a temporary building for them to be taught in. However, she couldn't find anything, but she kept trying. In the meantime, some of the residents from the houses near the school had seen the 2 teenage boys who started the fire. They all knew who they were and where they lived. They told the police, and the boys were arrested, charged with arson and sent to separate young offenders institutes for 6 years each. However, Mrs. Tinker was still trying to find an empty building for them to use as a school, but she was getting nowhere fast. The other staff were helping her too. In the meantime, the gang had made a full recovery, but of course Kicker had to go back to the hospital once a week so that they could keep an eye on her hand. Just as Mrs. Tinker and the other teachers were losing hope of finding a temporary building to use as a school, someone came forward and told them that there was an old school building about a mile away. She rang Leeds City Council, but they said they no longer owned the building, but they gave her the phone number of the company who bought it. She phoned the company who bought it, and they agreed to let her use the building of the temporary school. All the kids and their parents were informed of this, and the following Monday all the kids made their way to their new temporary school. The staff were told that it would be months before they could move back to their proper school, because there was a lot of damage that was caused by the fire and a lot of repairs needed doing. The kids made the most of their temporary built school, even though it was overcrowded. After they'd been there for 3 weeks, they broke up for the Easter holidays. When they went back, they had to continue going to the temporary school. They stayed there until the end of the summer term. Everyone thought that when they went back to school in September, they'd be back in their proper school, but sadly they were wrong. There were still a lot of repairs that needed doing, and when they were done, the whole building would need decorating from top to bottom. Of course, that couldn't be done until all the repairs were finished. The kids were fed up and they just wanted to go back to their old school building, but it just wasn't safe for them to be there. There were still lots of repairs to be done, but they couldn't wait to get back there. After they'd been back at school for a couple of weeks, they heard the news that all the repairs on their proper school were finished, and everyone cheered. When it came to the decorating, the kids mucked in, and in no time it was finished. Then all the new furniture arrived, and all the new books, etc., meaning the kids could finally move back in. As you can imagine, everyone was really happy to be back where they belonged. However, Kika just could not bring herself to go there because she was too scared. Instead, it was agreed that she could be homeschooled until she felt ready to go back. After a few weeks of being homeschooled, Kika finally felt ready to go back to school. Within no time she was back full time, and her parents were very proud of her. She even wrote a story about what happened and that no one should play with fire or matches. She entered it in the school's creative writing competition and she won first prize. Within no time the whole school were back in their old routine, and they were all very happy about it too. Kika overcame her ordeal and so did the rest of the gang. Within no time they were all back to their normal selves again. All of their friends and their family were very happy about this. They were even happy that the kids were playing silly pranks on people again. End of chapter 42. Thanks for watching, guys. Love yous. Bye.